It's ridiculously big to have a child. It completely shifts your perspective. It might seem that the baby's coming from the woman, but the man has a really, really big part to play.
You mentioned the birth. How was that for you?
Birth is not a joke. I knew going into that, I was like, this is going to be my most important calling to date, to be in support of my wife in as many ways as I possibly could.
Fathers now, we want to have a much closer relationship with our children.
100%. I can't stress enough how much I want to have that with my children. There was never a moment really where I just had a normal conversation with my parents, just about anything, really. Just to chat. For all of the great things that our parents did, I think there are definitely flaws that I would like to rectify. The best way to do that is by...
Listeners, back for another wonderful episode, and we have a returning guest here. But it was a few years since we last spoke, and a lot of things in life have shifted and changed, and he has become a father like myself. And as you know, I'm talking to wonderful and inspirational men about fatherhood and how it changes us, the impact, the lead up, and all these sorts of things. So today we have with us Jeffrey. How are you doing, Jeffrey?
I'm good, man. Really well. Thank you for having me on again. As you say, it's been a while since our last chat, but excited about this one. Lots of change in my life. So look forward to getting stuck in.
Yeah, man. How's fatherhood treating you?
Honestly, it's amazing, man. I struggle to find any downsides about it. Obviously, you have the obvious ones, the sleep deprivation that you go through, but I think honestly, even I just love it. I've been ready to be a father for a long time. I remember at my wedding, in my speech to my wife, I actually said let's I'm ready to be a father, so let's get the show on the road. Do you know what I mean? Because I wanted to be a father so much, and just knowing that I was with someone who I love so much, and my wife, was just going to be such an incredible experience. It's been incredible, man. Just seeing her grow, seeing as I mentioned before, just off air, seeing the growth between my wife and her, and that bond, and how she stepped into motherhood as well. But I think one of the biggest things I've found with fatherhood is that it completely shifts your perspective. Everything now is I'm no longer the one who I need to look out for. And even my wife, obviously my remit as a husband is to make my wife's life better, serve her, to try and be there for her as much as possible. And it's almost like you have to then juggle all these things, because then you have a child in the mix, and you're then kind of working together as a husband and wife, or partnership, pairing, or whatever it may be, to serve this child, to help them grow in the best possible way. So there's obviously been some, growing pains and figuring out how to best prioritize things, but I feel like we're doing pretty well. We have a lot of help, which has been amazing. Her family has been so supportive, staying with us. Her mum has been staying with us quite a lot as well. So that's just made things so much easier. I think, when they say it takes a village, I truly believe in that statement, because, when you have that support, when you have that help, it just allows you to take a breather, take a step back, learn from people, get advice from people, not necessarily having to take all of it, but at least just hearing people out and what they have to say on their experiences. It's been incredible, man. It's been so good.
Beautiful, man. And people love to give you advice, don't they, when you become a father of a child? Everyone becomes a child expert, and how have we been managing that, right? Because family, mother-in-law, mothers, father-in-law, even aunties are like, you need to do this, don't do that like that, do this like this. How have you been managing that yourself?
I think for me, I'm pretty set in that. Listen, if I feel like you've given me some salient advice, some good advice, I'll listen to it. But if I feel like this is advice that doesn't apply to me, or is, you're trying to, optimize for a time that doesn't exist anymore, I'll just say it. I remember I had a conversation with my mum, I think about a few weeks before Eliana was born. And my mum's pretty outspoken. She's quite a strong person, right? And she was saying you've got to do this and do this and do that and blah, 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 blah. And I said to her, look, mum, at the end of the day, when it comes to advice, there are going to be things out there that I'm going to hear and I'm going to listen to, and I think maybe are going to be useful and I'll take on board. But there are also going to be things that you might say that I'm just not going to listen to. I just don't feel applies to us. I don't feel, I'll respect that worked for you at whatever time we're talking about, but it doesn't work for us. And I think with my mum, she probably wasn't too enamored by that. But obviously, look, I'm a grown man. I can make my own decisions. I have my own family now. So I think there's always an acceptance of look, of course they're going to have, their own advice. And same when Eliana has her own children, I'm sure we'll give her advice, and I'm sure she'll maybe take some of it and maybe not take the rest of it, you know. I think there's a great saying from, I think it was Bruce Lee. I believe it says, what did he say? He says, take what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own. And that can kind of go for anything. Obviously, myself being in the nutrition space, I kind of tend to give people obviously a lot of advice around plant-based nutrition and what I've been doing online and sleep and health and well-being and all that kind of stuff. But I also say to people like, look, not every part of my advice is going to be suitable for you. Take what is useful, discard what isn't, and then kind of work through the whole process and add what you feel is uniquely your own and kind of elevates your own life. Because, you know, I can give generic advice, but it may not be pinpointed to your particularly, you know, to the context of your specific life. You know what I mean? And I think it's the same with parenting advice. You know, people are going to say, they're just projecting their own experiences. You know, some of Mary Lord's friends were talking about, saying to her about, oh, you know, postpartum and, you know, you're going to have to worry about this and hair loss and, you know, nutrients and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I said to her, I was like, babe, you've done things differently to other people. They're just projecting their own particular experience. You know, you've done things far differently. You've taken top supplements, you've been training, you will be trying to do everything in the right way. So if they haven't been doing that as well, they can't really speak on how it's going to work for you because your experience is completely different. And that also goes for, you know, parenting advice from her mom and other aunties and whatnot. Like, you take it on board sometimes, and other times you discard it. And I'm not afraid to tell people that, look, this is cool, great, but I'm not going to take this on board. And if they're upset about it, look, at the end of the day, it's my daughter. So you're not going to force me to do something that I'm not going to do. So.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because I've got quite a few of my friends are like Asian, Nigerian, and it's very interesting. And even my friends who are white, or my partner's, my partner also, she's Swedish, so she has her family. And it's very interesting to see how different families and different cultures do relate to. Like, my mum is highly opinionated, Jamaican woman. She's like, you should do this. This is what you need to do. Bjorn needs this, she'll say to us sometimes. And we're like, no, mum. Right? Or one of my friends, his friend's parents are Pakistani, and he struggles sometimes because he's used to, they get quite offended when he doesn't want to listen to them. Right? And then we have Orsa's parents who are very gentle. They don't say anything. They're like, when my mum and her parents were together, it's just very interesting to see the difference. Like, her mum's quite gentle. She'd be like, oh, but my mum will tell you, like, no, he needs this, you should do this. And it kind of steps you into adulthood a bit, you know, with your parents to go, no, I'm not, this is a boundary here. Like, my mum wanted to give Bjorn, she was like, can I give Bjorn some chips? She does ask, my mum's quite good, she asked recently, because, you know, he's like 13 months. We're like, no chips.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, if I make the chips in the air fryer from scratch, can I give those to him? We were like, okay, you can give those to him. Yeah, but not too many. And she was like, okay. Yeah. But you have to kind of set your boundary with your family and parents. So they'll just do, and I think too many parents, especially maybe younger parents, they get steamrolled by their families.
Absolutely, 100%. And as I said, I've at the end of the day, we're building our family, right? With my wife, myself, my daughter. We are the most important people in terms of the decisions that are going to be made. For example, where we go to school, where we go to church, and what kind of food she's going to eat and things like that. You know, the food one, especially, like, that's like, you know, obviously, you know, she's had her family have, you know, a lot of involvement with certain things, and I'm more than happy with that. But the food, that's going to be my domain. And I know that because she's going to be eating well, and there's no doubt about that. I do not care what anyone says. There's not going to be any, you know, processed food, or not too many anyway. Like, obviously, if she's at little parties and whatnot, fair enough. But when you're in the house, because at the end of the day, I eat like I eat in the house, so why would she eat any differently? She's not going to be vegan, by the way. She will be very plant focused. She's going to be a bit of a blend between how both my wife and myself eat, but she will eat very, very healthy, lots of plant foods, lots of antioxidants, you know, nutrient rich, colorful fruits and vegetables, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, you're so right in that, you know, a lot of young parents just get steamrolled because maybe they're afraid to upset their parents. Like, I'm not afraid to upset my parents or any other quote unquote elder figures, because at the end of the day, I would much rather do that and have my daughter be raised in the way that I would want in whatever specific area we're talking about, rather than just allow something to happen because I'm scared of, you know, upsetting my parents or family members or aunties or whatever. And then further down the line, be like, oh man, I should have said this, or I should have stood up for myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, man. I totally agree. I totally get that as well. And I want to take a slightly different direction to the
Mm,
conversation. And questions kind of flashed across me is, you said you were really looking forward, you really wanted, feel like you've been ready to be a father for a number of
mm,
years.
mm.
Were there any fears that you had, like fears or concerns that were kind of coming up before, obviously, you found out you were pregnant, even after you found out you were pregnant, maybe
Mm.
that surfaced?
Do you know what? I would say that the only time fear really kind of like viscerally came into my space, I guess, was when we found out. So the interesting thing is that, so obviously we got married in July last year, July 2024. Um, well, I say that again. We had our traditional wedding in Ghana in April 2024, and then we had our white wedding in the UK in July. And then, so we were, and look, for full disclosure, my wife, she'd previously had breast cancer. So she'd been on medication and chemotherapy and that kind of stuff. And she was told by, oncologists and doctors that, it might be quite difficult for you to get pregnant naturally because a lot of the medication that she was on and things like that. So I guess at the time, when we got married, we were kind of thinking like, okay, we're not trying, but we're not being careful, if that makes sense. So we are kind of just like, because we were in a position where, we're building a stable family, we've got a place where we're kind of settled. If it was to happen, it wouldn't be like the end of the world. Like, well, look, we're married, it would be amazing. But that moment, it was still a surprise when we found out. And I think at that moment, that was when a lot of the things started to flash in my mind. I started to think about, oh gosh, am I going to be the best father? Or, money and providing for the family. And all of these things kind of came onto my shoulders at that moment, probably for about a day. And then after that, it's funny because I actually went on Reddit and I saw a lot of Reddit's a really funny place. I went on Reddit and I saw all these threads about like first time dads and like what their experiences were in terms of when they found out and then the subsequent weeks leading up to the pregnancy and then after. And there were so many positive stories about dads kind of being propelled to kind of really grow in their roles as husbands, as fathers, even in the professional environment, doing well, earning more money, just being driven by that purpose of knowing that you've got a family to look after and to provide for, and a son or a daughter to kind of, set an example for, essentially. And that kind of really gave me a real good like jolt in the arm. I was like, this is amazing. Like, if all of these guys out there are doing it and they had their fears, but then they overcame them and really kind of moved forward and progressed in their lives, then I know I can do the same thing. Even though I knew before anyway, but it was almost like it was good to see that, particularly after those like fears of, oh wow, we're having a baby, like, because it's such a big thing. Like it's ridiculously big to have a child, and I think it's taken far too lightly. I think sometimes in society, just having kids, like whatever it may be, like that is a big responsibility, and I think something that I always knew how big it was, and it was never something that I was going to take lightly. So yeah, I think that was probably the first and maybe only real time that I guess a lot of the fears kind of came. And obviously now and again, I'm thinking, I still want to be continuing to grow in my life, continue to grow professionally, to be able to support and all these things. That kind of fleetingly comes in, but I feel like I'm on the right path and on the right track. And yeah, I think that was probably the time where it really kind of came to a head. But as I said, reading all of those kind of reflections from other people was really helpful.
Mm. And what you described there around the kind of providing, creating structure, being a best dad, I can resonate deeply with that in my own self. But so many of the men I've spoken to, and I find it quite interesting, kind of psychologically and evolutionary wise, and it's probably something to do with like socialization, but so many men I've spoken to said exactly the same words of like, oh my God, we're having a baby. Holy shit, we're going to have a baby. Have I got my money right? Can I provide? Am I going to be able to like look after the house and protect these people, not just from threats of wild dogs and lions, but can I protect them emotionally from the world that's coming? And I found it really interesting for myself. And then I picked up a book called Pregnancy for Men by a guy called Mark Wood. And this book was invaluable. Like I've every time I meet a friend of mine falls pregnant, I send them this book now. That's going to be the gift because it's so good. And because in the first chapter he talks about this kind of wanting to protect, and he peppers it throughout the pregnancy book, and he talks about afterwards, the part of the protection is the emotional protection from other people,
Mm.
protecting the boundaries of the family when the baby's born,
Yeah,
and making sure that
that kind of stuff.
people
Yeah,
aren't just coming willy-nilly to hang
yeah,
out the house for too long and so forth. And I think it's beautiful to weave in this kind of protection in a world where masculinity now can kind of feel like, what is it, what we're allowed to do, that there's
mm.
still this protection element that's like incredibly healthy, boundaried, and about creating safety for the family that
Yeah.
kind of kicks in for a man in many
Yeah.
ways.
I like that. I think it's not because it's not so much about like the kind of material side of things, not only about the material. Of course, that's important, but it's more, as you say, it's more like, because your wife's going to be going through a period of recovery. Can I be there to support her? Can I be there to, as you say, if people are trying to come around the house, make sure it's on her terms, be that kind of like shield and that armor for her and then the baby whilst we're kind of growing in that early phase. And as you say, then protecting emotionally and being there, being supportive. And there was actually some really, really interesting things I experienced throughout the kind of process of my wife being pregnant, which kind of ties in with that. So there was a period, and I don't know if this is maybe a bit too much information, but like there was a period where my libido went down, and I was like, okay, this is kind of strange. This is not usually how it is, because TLDR is usually like very, very high. Like I get my blood work done, testosterone's really high. It's also great. Obviously, I do all the right things, training, nutrition, supplementation, whatever. But it dropped off, and I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. So I think it was like 2 a.m. at one night. I was just researching, because I'm a researcher. I always feel like there's a reason for something, particularly when it comes from like a physiological standpoint. There's always a reason. So I found out that when they've done some studies on men that were expectant fathers, and it showed that they actually experienced a drop in testosterone levels, primarily because they're now, obviously from a biological standpoint, from an evolutionary standpoint, they've served their purpose of like, right, I've given my wife the seed, now we're pregnant, we've mated, right? And then you now go into this kind of period or this process of, you become more of a nurturer. It's almost like a biological adaptation to become more nurturing, to become more caring, to become less like dominant. I need to mate, I need to impregnate kind of thing. You've done that thing, and now you go through that process of, right, and you calm down. It's almost like preparation to be a present father, essentially. So I found that really, really interesting, because that kind of like tied in with what I was feeling and what I was experiencing. Because during that process of the libido going down, I was just so focused on just like being there for my wife and supporting her, and just being that kind of, as I mentioned before, that shield, that kind of nurturer. I was just thinking about how I was going to be as a dad, and obviously, particularly with a girl, it's almost, I feel like it's a bit different than having a young boy. I feel like maybe you just become a little bit like, not softer, but like you just become a bit more. I mean, I know when she's older, she's probably just going to have me wrapped around her finger. It's going to be a problem. But yeah, I think, as you said, just to touch on the emotional side of things, I think that kind of biological adaptation that I kind of experienced and I saw in some of the studies kind of made a lot of sense, because I was going into that mode of just wanting to support as much as I could, just wanting to be there, just wanting to be more nurturing, to be like more present. Not that I wasn't present before, but just to almost take it to a new level in support of my wife and my incoming daughter. So yeah, I found that really interesting.
There's a fascinating shift that there's the testosterone drops and something peaks or something else rises. The estrogen starts to rise. That's the
Prolactin
word.
rises, yeah.
Prolactin starts to rise, and we become nurturing fathers, or
Yeah.
what was it? There's a term. Is it the warrior in the garden? I think.
Yes.
The warrior
Better
in the
to be a
garden.
warrior in the garden than a gardener in the war.
Yeah, to nurture and look after.
Yeah.
How did you find the journey of pregnancy? Like, because it's for us men, we're not pregnant, we're not growing, we're an observer, we're like the witness of the pregnancy, but we also then have feelings and emotions that arise for ourselves. Like, I'm just really curious, how was that for you?
Yeah, it was very interesting. Obviously, it's kind of strange at the start, because you're pregnant, but you can't see anything. Well, my wife's pregnant, but you can't see anything. She's experiencing and feeling all the changes and all the hormonal shifts, and she's like very much in tune with the baby from conception, even if there's nothing she's not showing, right? Whereas, as you say, we're kind of more like, I don't want to say removed from it, but we're kind of on the outside looking in kind of thing. And I think that connection, and that's why we obviously, from a biological standpoint, that female that mother baby connection is just like there immediately, whereas I think that has to grow for men a little bit because we've not experienced them being inside of us. Like obviously the different things that my wife is experiencing with the baby kicking and understanding the baby's kind of shifts and patterns, like when she's going to be awake and knowing all of these things, whereas we don't have that. I mean, thankfully, my wife's pregnancy was pretty good. Apart from the first trimester where there was a bit of fatigue, a bit of nausea. Thankfully, she didn't have much of the morning sickness or anything like that. Second trimester was great. She was back in the gym, back training, back lifting weights. Third trimester, she kind of dialed it down a little bit because there was a little bit more fatigue that started to present itself. But for the most part, she was, feeling pretty good, lifting weights and things like that. So yeah, I think on that side, it was good to see that there weren't any kind of like troubling parts of it. But yeah, I think it was the moment that she was born was probably when like that connection really like sparked. Obviously, you like feel her kicking and things like that, but you can't really like, it's still quite hard to conceptualize because I was still a bit removed from it, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I think, I look forward to we pray that we are able to have another or more kids in the future to experience it again, because it was amazing. But yeah, it was interesting in terms of how, being a bit removed from it and not quite having those same feelings and that connection as my wife did early on. But yeah, regardless, it was amazing to see.
Mm. Yeah, it's a funny thing to just observe, the kicking and how they respond to voices and sounds and TV and music, and you get to like learn all these weird things that like babies love music. They love listening. If you put music on, they really enjoy it. Or Bjorn didn't like certain food. If it also had certain food, he didn't like it. He'd like kick and turn and move and
really?
all sorts. Yeah.
Oh, actually, that was interesting. So there was just on the food one. So whenever my wife would eat like strawberries or kiwi, the baby would just start kicking. And we kind of, my wife got the impression that she really liked it. So we're looking forward to obviously when weaning starts, like things like kiwi, strawberries, blueberries. Like she's going to love them all because my wife eats very healthy as well. So I think weaning, well, I'm sure we'll come on to that. But weaning is going to be a great experience. But yeah, just seeing how she responded to certain foods in the womb was really interesting. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's funny. And you mentioned the birth. Because birth is birth's like I'm going to call it initiation, and birth's like initiation for a man. You're there at the side of birth.
Yeah.
How was that for you? What was tell me, I'd love to know some of your experience about birth.
Yeah, that was a process. My wife did unbelievably well. That was quite something. She actually sent me a video. I think it was about maybe 2 or 3 weeks before she gave birth. A video of this guy saying that on Instagram, saying to dads or to expectant dads, basically saying, watch your wife give birth, like watch it happen. Just look and see that everything like come out, right? And I think he was kind of positioning it from a place of, if you do that, you will truly have like a deeper level of appreciation, deeper level of respect, deeper level of love for your wife. So I was like, yeah, I'm absolutely going to do that. I didn't want to just kind of like hide in the corner and wait for it all to be done and then pop out and be like, hey, I'm the dad. Like, I wanted to be there in the trenches, supporting her, guiding her through the pushing process and whatnot. And yeah, I just have this like, I didn't quite get the video of the baby coming out, but I do have a video of like 10 seconds after the baby came out. So if we think about when she came out, so she's got a lot of hair, right? So I just saw like this head, and it just had so much hair, and I was like, wow, this is actually happening. Like this is actually happening. I was like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, right? And obviously I'm trying to guide my wife. Like there's a few midwives in the room, her mum's in the room as well. The team were amazing. We were at Queen Charlotte in East Acton, great hospital, incredible service, incredible team. So the head's coming out, and she's like, so the head fully comes out, and then the lady who was kind of like guiding, the midwife who was guiding Mary-Laure through it, she was like, if you look down, or if you feel down, you can feel the baby's head. And she felt the baby's head, and her mind was blown as well. She was like, wow, there's actually a baby's head there. And then the baby came out, and this is what I got on video. I got a video of like my wife holding the baby, literally just as she's come out. And she didn't cry, which I thought was kind of weird. I thought, is there something wrong with her? Like, and they were like, no, she's fine, And then she kind of just like, I've got an amazing picture as well, but the baby was just, she was just like looking up at Marie-Laure, just like looking at her thinking like, why, what's going on here? Um, she didn't cry. She kind of did like a couple of coughs and that was it. And I have this picture of like, yeah, as I said, like maybe 5 minutes after she was born, of like my wife holding her and looking down, and the baby's just like looking up, and it's just the most amazing picture. Like I feel like it needs to be framed, because it's just that connection, that look between the two of them was just it's incredible, man. So yeah, that process was wow. Yeah, that was amazing. That was I don't say that lightly. Like that was just the most beautiful thing. Yeah, I can't wait to experience that again, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh man, because
Yeah.
birth's like how long how long was the birth lasting for you for?
So she was pushing for about an hour and 45 minutes or something like that. Labor was a few days ish, something like that. Quite the process, but yeah, it was she did well. As I said, she did really, really well. And I do think that, a lot of the things around training in pregnancy and trying to keep fit and trying to keep healthy, it definitely does help, because it was a bit of a marathon. And I think, we're seeing a lot of, well, from what I've heard, a lot of people going through, C-sections and things like that. And she had like the kind of physical fitness and the stamina to be able to kind of go through, because she wanted a vaginal birth. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with any other forms of delivery. Like, people do elective C-sections, and however the baby comes is the most important thing, really. But what she wanted was what she ended up getting in that regard. And I do think that her physical fitness and her health and her strength, as well as many other things, obviously a great team and things like that, did help as well. So yeah.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's a few day marathon. We were 2.5. Labor started for us on this. Actually, labor started 24 hours. It was on a Saturday afternoon, and then we was born by Sunday afternoon. But it's very easy for a man, I imagine, to think that he's just like a spare part in the whole thing, because there's a team. But actually, I'd love to get your take on this. Is like there's a lot of the support and the grounding and the reassurance that you provide is so powerful in those moments, because it like I said, if you're there for days, no sleep, and you're out of your environment, you're in a hospital with those bright lights and stuff, it takes quite a lot for a man to show up in those moments.
Definitely. And I think I knew going into that, I was like, this is going to be like my most important calling to date, to be in support of my wife in as many ways as I possibly could. Like my needs are going out the window for these next few days. It's all about her. It's all about what she needs. It's all about what's going to make her comfortable. It's all about giving her the best environment, because birth is not a joke. Like that is not a joke at all. Like, we've obviously seen statistics around, Black maternal health and the risks, I think 5 times more likely to die during childbirth. And just in general, childbirth is like a very precarious situation physically. So yeah, I mean, it was only going to be, from my standpoint, like just trying to support as much as humanly possible, just being there for her, being of service to her. Obviously we had her mum there, which was great as well. And, just that support was incredible for her as well. But as a husband, it was me just to be like, right, I'm going to give you whatever you need for how long it's going to take. And we're going to get through this together. So yeah, I don't think, it might seem that obviously the baby's coming from the woman, but the man has a really, really big part to play, knowing what, especially things like, birth plans and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they go out the window. She didn't get exactly everything that she wanted, but in terms of the overall outcome, it was, kind of close to what was desired. So knowing what she would have wanted, knowing the kind of things, because in certain situations, if there's pain, she may not be able to articulate very well what she may want. So it's up to me to know what she wants and be able to advocate for her and things like that. So yeah, it's really important to just be there and be in support of her in the best way possible. So yeah, men definitely have a huge role to play in that process.
Yeah, because there's, like you said, with the birth plan, there's moments and they're asking questions. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And, you got a woman who's either extremely tired from days of labor, who is, my partner also had an epidural at one point. And it's like she's drowsy, she's drugged up, and we end up with a C-section. And there was a moment where they came in. There was a point where the labour just wasn't progressing, and Bjorn was getting distressed, so they were a bit concerned. And suddenly, about 5 new people arrive in the room, and they're like, "Okay, so you have a C-section. There's all these documents you need to sign." And this guy read through something, right, at this rapid rate. Like, and in the voice of someone who's read something 100 times and is bored of saying it.
Yeah,
exactly. And it was like, you need to sign here. And I was just about to go to the toilet, and there was a moment I was like, wait a minute, this is messed up. I turned around and I went back and I was like, she isn't signing anything, and you're not to read anything to her until I come back from the toilet. And suddenly, I was like, these 5 people all just were like, oh, okay. Everyone just stopped. And I went to the toilet. I took a pee. I took some breaths. I took some big breaths, because I was like, okay. There was a moment where I was like, this isn't going the way that we wanted it to go. And this isn't really the ideal way that I wanted it to go. But this is where we are. That's what we're going to deal with. And I came back out, and I remember like breathing, came back out, and I was like, okay, tell me what's going on. And they were like, this is what's going to happen. This is and then they take you through the risks. Like, this is the risk of these different things happening. And you're like, okay, cool, fair enough. But it's so easy again in those moments. If you can't ground yourself and you can't be present, you can't bring yourself, you could just be like, oh, just do whatever you want, and without being really there and taking some level of charge, because that was kind of necessary in that moment before signing all these documents. And just echo what you say, like, you know, men, we have such an important role in the moment of like being there as a presence, as a real presence, and not just you're not just a helper or servant. Like you do have a real defined purpose that's useful as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a responsibility, and it's like the birth partner, that's what they call it. Like it really is that important of a role. So yeah, it's definitely the one to take lightly for sure.
I remember when I first heard the word birth partner, I was a bit like, that just sounds a bit annoying. Like, I know we're trying to be gender neutral and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But after the birth, I was like, oh yeah, it feels like it elevates the role. Instead of just being dad or partner, it's like, oh no, you're a partner. You are a partner in this birthing process.
In that experience, in that process, yeah.
Yeah, and a needed partner in there as well. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, it was a wild journey, man. Wow.
And I'm curious actually about you and your imprint of fatherhood. You know, because you get your imprint of fatherhood from a father, or even to some degree from other family members and men. And I'm curious, what do you see as that imprint that you received as fatherhood?
I think from one of the things that I feel like I got from my dad was a sense of calm. And I think that served me quite a lot in a number of different ways in my life. I feel like I have an ability to stay quite calm under pressure. And now, obviously, fatherhood, pregnancy, the birth process, the various moments during those 3 processes, you're going to be dealing with like high pressure situations, right? So I think being able to have a sense of calm, have a sense of like to be quite cerebral in those moments, I think I feel is going to serve me quite well, particularly when we're seeing her grow up and different milestones, going to school, and, you know, being able to navigate things like discipline and things like that, and kind of setting those boundaries of, okay, this is the parent that I want to be, so she knows it as hierarchy. However, I still want my daughter to be able to come and speak to me about absolutely anything. Because I don't really maybe feel like I had that as growing up. I feel like, you know, African parents, maybe there's a little bit of fear there, and I still want there to be a healthy amount of fear there as to my daughter in terms of, okay, this is my dad, I need to listen to what he's saying. However, if I get into some kind of problem or whatever, I can come to him and speak to him about anything. So yeah, I always remember my dad having a sense of calm. And I think that's probably the one kind of defining characteristic about him that I feel like I've taken on. I feel like I could implement that into the various stages of fatherhood that I'm going to experience. So I'll probably say that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's an important one. Really important one. But also interested in, like you said, being able to be approachable, you know, being able to be approachable father, an open father who's going to listen and engage. as something that often so many, and I speak to so many men whose fathers were either like absent or physically, but even like emotionally absent, or they were the kind of provider dad who they provided, but when dad came home from work, you need to leave him alone because he's tired, don't bother him, type of thing. And it ends up with that almost like a slightly distant relationship through life. And I'm seeing this a lot with fathers now, is like we want to have a much closer relationship with our children.
Definitely.
A much more emotionally attuned relationship with our children. Is that something you're really gunning for?
100%. I can't like stress enough how much like I want to have that with my children. To be able to like, I think one of the things that I remember through childhood, and let's not say I had a bad childhood at all, because it was, it was pretty good. I went to a decent school. It was all well and good. I think there were moments where like I say moments, it was a lot of the time it was like, right, parent child, there's a lot of directive. There was never a moment really where I just had a normal conversation with my parents, just about like anything really, just to chat. Do you know what I mean? To help build the kind of relationships that I feel parents and kids should have. So yeah, I think, when my daughter's growing up, I want her to know that she can come to me for anything. We can have a chat about anything. We can go and have like a coffee or whatever when she's, well, not coffee, because she won't be drinking coffee when she's like 7, but like, whether it's like, we can go to get like a lunch, or I can take her out for a walk and we can just chat, and we can just like, she can tell me about her day. She can tell me what's going on in her life, what she's finding fascinating, what she's finding interesting. And then I also don't think that there's going to be that sense of, and I know this is the case with a lot of Asian parents, a lot of African parents, Caribbeans as well, where your parents maybe only show you love based on your achievements. So it's like, if you do well at school, you get the grades, you get the straight A's, you get your top of the class, whatever it may be, then they'll like, you're amazing, you're great, you're this, you're that. And if you don't get those grades, you're going to get berated, you're going to get lambasted, you're going to be like, you're a failure, this, that, and the other. You're going to be made to feel like your worth is tied up in what grades you get. And look, of course, education is very important. But if my daughter comes home from school and she's got like, in her midterm reports, she's got like a C or whatever, the last thing I'm going to do is start screaming at her, because that doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever. It does absolutely nothing. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to understand why this happened, what's been going on, why she got the C, why was the effort low, why was the understanding of the topic and the subject low, because ultimately I want her to have a thorough understanding of how she can improve and be better. Of course, I want my daughter to be as accomplished as she possibly can be, but that's not going to come through me screaming at her or for shouting at her. And there's not going to be, I think there was also a sense from the older generation that, they used our accomplishments to also kind of puff up their own chests in their own social circles, whether that's at church, whether that's at the wherever it may be, some other environment where all of their friends are. It's like, oh, my daughter's gone to this uni, or my son's gone to that. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, because it's like, I feel like there was a sense of, because they didn't have much themselves, they would try and live vicariously through their kids, and maybe even usher their kids down a route which they may not have wanted to, for their own kind of personal gain. So there's going to be none of that as well. Absolutely none of that. I know that, my wife and I have had conversations around trying to nurture our daughter into the best possible young woman that she can possibly be. But of course, she's also going to have a huge say in terms of what she finds interesting, what she wants to do, the things that drive her as well. I want to know about all of that. So I want to nurture her in the best possible way. So, for all of the great things that our parents did, I think there are definitely flaws that I would like to rectify. And the best way to do that is not by blaming them, because they were ultimately doing what they thought was best. I absolutely understand that. But understanding where they maybe went wrong, try and correct that in terms of how I raised my daughter, and wanting to have the best possible relationship with her as a result.
Yeah, no, I definitely resonate with that. The way in which we were taught to, and I kind of put it into simple terms now. The feeling, and I spoke to someone about this recently, it's like the feeling often I had was, you're good enough when you're doing well.
Yeah.
Like, your compliments make you good enough, but who you are, your character, isn't that important.
Yeah.
as a core thing. So it's like
Hmm.
who I am is important, but what I
Mm.
do is important,
Mm.
which is very common for men. I know
Yeah.
men feel like this a lot.
Hmm.
And it kind of erodes away and almost gives us the feeling that, especially when we start to move into relationships, our value in a relationship is what we can provide in the relationship, whether that's the money we make, the house we can provide, and so forth. And like our value isn't in who we are. And I think the thing that's kind of struck me as well as personally is being emotionally available, being able to like be with my own feelings and not be like a parent, a father who was quick to anger as well. Anger is a way that's directed at child and never explained. Never like, I'm sorry, I was really angry with you. I got angry because it's not because of anything you did anything wrong and you're bad. It's just that it was a bit too much in that moment. That was no one ever explained anything like that to me as a young man growing up. It was just like anger, shouted at, beaten, pushed, quiet, silence, and then suddenly you'd be talked to, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm no longer done anything wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a weird thing. And what you just touched on there about apologizing, like I will be like, because I know I'm going to get things wrong, whether it's, not being attentive to what my daughter's saying or something like that, or I feel like I'm a pretty slow to anger type guy, so I don't feel like there's going to be much frustration, but there might be. I might snap, I might say something that I may not mean or whatever. I will feel no way to have a chat with my daughter, to sit her down and be like, you know what, I shouldn't have done that, daddy shouldn't have done that, I'm very sorry, talk to me about what, just have a conversation, you know what I mean? I think these are things that seem really straightforward to me, and again, I think perhaps our parents were just kind of doing what their parents did to them. So again, there's no blame attached. It's not a blame game. It's more just like recognizing how important that kind of emotional connection is, and valuing, the emotional side and the character of the child, and not just see them as just like, oh, you're the child, you don't matter. Like, I'm the hierarchy here. You say, what I need to say. You do what I say. There's interesting. My cousin, younger cousin, I remember her mum called me. This was a few months ago, actually, talking because they'd been having some issues, and then she was talking about like, she must respect me. Da, 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 da. And I said to her, I was just like, why? And then she was like, well, she's just got to respect, disrespect, respect. And, I was just like, well, because there was something about her university choices or something like that. And I said, look, why should she just respect you just because? Like, at the end of the day, have you heard her out? Have you listened to what she has to say? Have you tried to get more of an understanding of why she's making certain choices or why she wants to go down this route? It's not always about you. It's not always about, oh, respect, 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 because respect has to be earned. It's not just given. Like, why would she just respect you just because she's her mother, regardless of how you've treated her, how you've spoken to her, how you've, failed to hear her out? And I don't know whether it landed or whatever, but I felt like I just had to say it, because I just felt like it's, just, oh, she's got to respect me. Well, why? Do you know what I mean? Yes, of course, there has to be an inherent level of respect for your parents. However, if you're treating your child, you're, even in the Bible, it says like, parents don't don't anger your children. Like, if you're driving them to anger, like, there's got to be something in that you've got to look at and be like, hang on a second, am I being the best kind of parent I can possibly be here? So yeah, this whole just respect for the sake of respect, I don't agree with that. I think, my daughter isn't just like, I can't just expect to treat my daughter anyhow and then her just have her respect me because I'm the dad. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that's another thing that I'll be definitely being mindful of.
Mm, yeah, that's a common one, right? The respect, you must respect your parents. It's like the frustration they feel when you don't do what it's almost a tool of, is really, I often hear it as, I just want you to do what I'm telling you to do without asking me any questions about it.
Yeah. As if you're not a human being who has their own thoughts, who has their own understanding of things, who wants to engage in a conversation about certain things. I just find that weird. So yeah, I don't think there'll be much of that. But as I said, I think there has to be a healthy, because you can go the other way. You can be, super friendly with your kids, almost to the point where they're your friend, and then there are no boundaries. That's obviously not going to happen. There are going to be boundaries. There's going to be an understanding that, look, there's a hierarchy here. If I do something wrong, there's going to be repercussions. There's going to be conversations had. There's going to be discipline. I'm not going to be beating my kids. I just don't need to. There's no reason to do that. But so there has to be that. But by the same token, you still want your kids to not to have a healthy sense of like, right, I don't want to do that because my dad might do this, but to still be like, look, I want to have a conversation. We can just sit down and chat and have fun. I think it should be a relationship that's like multifaceted. Do you know what I mean? It should be one that is, she can come to me for anything. I can help her grow. I can help her understand the realities of the world. I can instill a sense of discipline to her. I can show her where she should be going or what kind of things she should be doing. I can show her what's objectively right and wrong. So yeah, I want to just kind of have the best possible kind of relationship with her. And these are all things that my wife and I have discussed, and I feel like we're on the same page as well.
And on that, actually, discussing what sort of discussions did the two of you have about who you want to be as parents and what sort of child do you want to raise before obviously having...
Yeah, so I think we kind of talk. I think the discipline is probably one of the things that came up quite a lot, because we know kids are going to be kids, but there does have to be a sense of kind of discipline and boundaries, and having a sense of like, right, I need to, if I tell you something once and I hope you to understand why you shouldn't do that, I would expect you to then not do that, right? Because to have an understanding of that. But I ultimately think that we want to raise a child who's respectful, who is, we want to raise her in the faith because we're Christians as well. We want to have her just have strong principles, strong values, to be a good person, to be someone who is reliable, someone who people can count on, someone who is respectful to people, someone who wants to show up in the world in the best possible way, a good functioning member of society. I think these are the important things. I think, we want to kind of instill a lot of the values that we share in our relationship into her, and just to have her be a good person, just to be an individual who is wants to grow, wants to be better, wants to listen to her parents, wants to, and ultimately then wants to start a family of her own as well. So, and look, there are going to be so many obstacles and bumps along the way. We're not going to be perfect. We're not going to get everything right. And that's the challenge of fatherhood, right? I don't think, no 2 days, especially when they start to really understand what's going on and start to walk and start to then grow, and nursery and school and things like that. No 2 days are going to be the same. There are going to be loads of different challenges that we're going to experience. Like, one of the things we mentioned about, screen time for kids, it's in theory, it's like, you don't want to expose your kids to screens, this, that, and the other. But in practice, it might be a different story. Like we might be on a flight, she might be screaming, and maybe the only thing that might placate her might be a little bit of time on a phone. Like, do you know what I mean? So we don't know. But I think in theory, we want to do all the right things. We want to kind of raise her in the best possible way. And in practice, we'll have to just kind of go along with it, and maybe, be malleable in some of our processes, but try and keep the structure very much the same in terms of how we want to kind of go down. So yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned the screen time, because it's something that has been a reoccurring kind of conversation when I speak to fathers. Because what I've noticed is a lot of people, and you're aware of, there's some research around how much screen time children should have before the age of 4.
Yeah, I've seen some of that, yeah.
Come out of Sweden, it's like 0. It's like nothing. They shouldn't see a screen at all. And I spoke to Connor Beaton actually earlier today, and his boy's 4, and he said that at this point, his boy probably sees screens about half an hour a week. And our boy's like 1, so there was a point where we realized that in the first few months, like, he didn't even really notice the TV is really there, right? It's fine. I can sit and watch football. It's okay. And then there's a point where he realized, oh, there's a TV over there. I like looking at that. And at that point, we kind of made an agreement. We're like, we're going to try and have the first 2 years where he doesn't watch any screens at all. And we're 1 year in, and he doesn't, when he's around, the TV's off. He might see us on a laptop sometimes, but he won't necessarily see the screen. He might see us on a phone and he wants to see, but we try and keep the phone out of reach. And the only issue, like at my mum's house, my mum loves to have the TV on. So the TV's on, but even then I noticed very quickly he doesn't watch it. Strangely, it's just like part of the decoration for him. And it was managing family, because it was like having to say to my mum and my sisters, like, hey, We don't put the phone in front of him to show him reels or whatever, or and we don't put him facing the TV. Just really simple things early on. And once we had buy-in from those immediate people, and then having to place those boundaries numerous times, obviously, it kind of become easier. And at a year now, he's not used to looking at the screen at all. And I can see a pathway, like after speaking to Connor this afternoon, I can see it's going to be an effortful pathway, but through modeling, I'm looking to kind of get to that 4 or 5 year old mark and it not be constantly on the iPad, because I just see it so often when we go out for dinner or lunch, or you just see these kids who are probably, 2.5, 3 years old, and they're just on the iPad for like 2 hours while the people are eating.
I really don't like seeing that, and I think I'm not going to make any judgment on anyone's parenting whatsoever. Like I'm no expert, and even if I was, I'm not going to make any judgment on them. But I do have something just kind of, it doesn't sit right with me when I see a child at dinner and the parents are kind of like not really engaging with the child and they've just slapped an iPad in front of them. I'm just like, what is that doing for the child? That's almost like, surely that's a time where, you're as a family, you're sitting there, you should be engaging, should be chatting with the kids, like, saying whatever, just kind of maybe asking them questions about the food or whatever it may be. That's the way that I see it. And just of what you mentioned about the screen. So sometimes actually, so when we're like in the living room area, we might be feeding her whatever, and we're watching something. We don't watch TV all the time. It's only really after like 7 p.m. But she's not going to sleep until like 10 at the moment. Obviously, when she starts going to bed at like, earlier, like whether it's 7:30, 7, then we won't even need to have the TV on. Then we can put her down and then not have to worry. Because at the moment, she sometimes like cranes her neck. So we will be watching like Wimbledon. We're watching the tennis. And she'd be like craning her neck to like watch Wimbledon, to watch the tennis. And I actually mentioned this to my wife the other day, and she was like thinking the same thing. I was like, what? Because she'll be looking at the TV. But it's almost like if you turn her fully away from it, she won't then be trying to like watch it. But it's kind of like if it's in kind of eye shot, she'll kind of have a look and see what's going on. It's like, what is that like? So we're just trying to figure out what to do about that. Because I don't really want her to. Yeah, and especially with phones as well, actually. I don't really want her to be, even sometimes when if I'm going to take a picture of her or something just to send, she'll be like looking at it thinking, what's this thing? And it feels a bit weird. So then I kind of just put it away. And then I'm like, just get that away, get that out of her sight. So I'm thinking maybe, in circumstances where I'm with her, like just have my phone in another room, just to not even have it around. Because ultimately, a lot of the time, I'm not even doing anything like that's really worthwhile on it. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm working or I'm editing a video or doing something. You're just on it for the sake of being on it. So for the most part, I don't even really need to have the phone around while she's there. So yeah, it's a process. But I think, yeah, we're not going to be wanting her to be on iPads and all this kind of stuff a lot of the time. But yeah, we'll have to just see how it all pans out.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
And yeah. And weaning. I imagine you got a little plan for weaning. You know what I'm going to say? There was a moment where we were doing some things, and my partner's aware of the work you do, and she said something to me. She's like, it would have been like not long after. I think I mentioned to her, I was like, oh, Jeffrey's had a baby. She was like, oh, fantastic. Once you've had a baby, you're so much more interested in other people that have babies.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. It's really quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, before that, you're like, oh, someone had a baby. You're like, oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Happy for them. Once you have one, you're like, oh my God, they're the baby. Let me see the baby. What's going on? Yeah. And she was like, I wonder what Jeffrey's plan is with the weaning. I was like, I imagine he's got a really good plan. He's probably done a bit of research and reading about this.
Do you know what, actually? I need to do that. I need to do I know there's a really good platform called Solid Starts, and they have like a plan for weaning, which I think I might actually speak to my wife about and download. And I think that there's going to be a lot of not outside influence. My wife's very, very close with her family, like her mum and her 2 sisters. So they're probably going to be wanting to have some kind of influence. But I think it's probably where I need to kind of set that marker down. And look, they know that it's going to be healthy foods eaten regardless. It's not going to be like I'm not going to be dealing with any kind of battles as to be like, oh, give her processed food. And oh no, I don't think that's going to be the case. But it's more about the kind of foods that we're going to first start to kind of introduce. So in my mind, I'm thinking like banana and sweet potato and some of the things that are quite easy to puree. But I think, yeah, getting a plan, obviously, how to kind of combine it with milk and all that process. I think I need to look at that, and maybe if I get a full plan out and just be like, right, this is what we're doing, then we can move forward with that. As I touched on before, a lot of people have asked me, is she going to be vegan? She won't be, but I think she will be eating a very, very plant-rich diet, as most people should anyway. Do you know what I mean? If she wants to make that decision when she's older, that's up to her. Like, she's made, you know, when she's like 3, 4, she may see what I'm doing on how I'm eating, which isn't hugely different to my wife, but obviously, you know, protein sources are different and things like that. And she might just want to have some plant-based meals on some days, which is going to be great. She'll be eating plant-rich anyway, but if she wants to do that to you know, to eat the same as daddy, whatever, that'll be fine, and that'll be great. But yeah, I think ultimately it's going to be health promoting foods. There's not going to be any kind of, and I think that people, obviously, you know, in terms of what I do and understanding, like, Jeffrey's the guy who knows about nutrition. He's probably best placed to help a baby start eating food, or at least better placed than other people, to kind of start weaning a baby and really get some healthy foods into them. So yeah, we're not going to be raising a baby that eats beige foods, that's for sure.
Yeah, and all those it's a commitment me and my partner made. We were like, we want to make as much of his food ourselves.
Yes, yeah, that's what we're going to do. I mean, these pouches and all this kind of stuff, I just don't know. I just don't see how that's really something that I want to be doing. And actually, you know what? Just on that. So I remember we went to a baby shower. When was it? I think it was towards the start of the year, maybe February. A baby shower for one of my wife's friends. And one of the games at the baby shower was, they put some baby food, three different types of baby food on a plate, and you had to taste them to kind of taste what the kind of flavorings were, to kind of guess, oh, is this one sweet potato, or is this one apricot, whatever it may be. I totally understand, but when you put baby food in a baby's mouth, they just go like that. It's the most disgusting thing I think I've ever tasted in my life. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's like, it's not particularly nutrient dense. It's very watered down. I don't see why anyone, look, I'll say, let me rephrase. Obviously, contextually it's different. Like, some people may need these pouches, they may need baby food from like a convenience standpoint, and I think those serve that purpose pretty well. If you've not got the time, you're best to have that than to give your baby nothing. However, if you do have the opportunity and you do have the time and a chance to try and make the best possible food for your baby, you should absolutely take it. You know, only see those convenience foods in a pinch, right? You need something quickly. Don't like lean on those and have your kind of cupboard stacked with those, because that's just what you're going to do day to day. I don't think that's the way to go. So yeah, we'll definitely be making a lot of her food, if not all of the food, by ourselves. I know her mum will be helping out, and you know, we've even discussed some of the foods that we'd want to get into when she starts to wean. So like things like oatmeal and, you know, berries, all these foods that, you know, puree it and make it really fine and add some milk and things like that. Sorghum, a lot of the ancient grains that I like to eat as well, that are really healthy, just kind of puree them down, make them really easily palatable for her. Maybe add some dates and bananas to sweeten. Don't want to get onto those, you know, but those kind of like, you know, sweeteners too much. So yeah, it's going to be a fun process that I'm looking forward to. It's probably going to be pretty messy, but we'll see.
I look forward to seeing it, because we really leaned on a friend, my younger sister. She gave us Joe Wicks's Weaning 15. And I must say it was invaluable to, like, as a starting read and to understand things. And to this day, he's only ever had fish. He's never had any red meat. He's never had any chicken. It's only now we're like, he's 1 year old. Like, maybe we should consider, maybe we'll go and get some, to introduce it to him as a protein source, because they get a bit pickier when they get a bit older. Oh, really? Yeah. And you know, from my experience, what's interesting is those pouches you talk about, we've regularly had a few in the fridge, just in case, like we're going out and we need something.
Just in case thing, yeah, absolutely.
And the worst thing is he doesn't like them.
Well, and that's probably because you've been giving him more whole foods and cooking a lot of the foods yourself. So he's a bit more used to more flavorful, more naturally rich foods that have got like good flavor, healthy foods. So he comes to that and he's just like, I don't know about this.
Won't touch it. It's very funny.
Yeah.
We stayed at friends a few months back, and they got little girls about 6 months older than him, and she was having one, and he took it out of her hand and then squeezed a little bit into his mouth. And this was hilarious. I didn't see it. My partner saw it. He took it out. He got the cap and tried to put the cap back on and give it back. And we always laugh about that.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to see them eat, because the pouches where they're so pureed, you can get out of that we found we could get out of the super pureed food quite quickly, and it just needs to be soft and stuff to the point, now he's a year now, and it's really been, I've made him this porridge. He's got this porridge I've been making for him for literally the last 6 months, something he's been eating, which is like oats, almond milk, seeds and nuts in there as well. Seeds and nuts, bunch of seeds and nuts, carrot, and sweet potato, and depending if it's hanging around a bit of swede. And that's breakfast every morning. And he'll always eat that breakfast, like every day. He loves it. And initially, I just ground down all the nuts and the seeds in the blender. And then slowly, as time's gone on, they're less ground. In other words, I still grind up the nuts actually, but the seeds are just thrown in there and he eats it. And it's just interesting to see, and I teach him now to feed himself. So I give him the spoon, but the food is a wild ride. But he loves fruit. My boy loves fruit. He will eat. Good. You give him a nectarine and he is happy for 5 minutes. 5 whole minutes.
I love that. Yeah, it's going to be so fascinating, man. I really can't wait, because it's like, I know. So obviously, as I was mentioning before, a lot of the foods that my wife was eating through pregnancy, like seeing the kind of reaction, the kiwi and the strawberries, like I just know that she's going to like those foods, or I hope that she'll like those foods. It'd be quite interesting with the kiwis, because particularly with the green ones, because they can be quite tangy. And I know you see a lot of videos online with like giving a baby, a slice of lime or some kiwi or something like that. Blueberries are arguably my favorite fruit. So it'd be interesting to see how she does with them. I've got a feeling we could end up being bankrupted by how much they're going to love blueberries. But if that's the case, then great. Listen, all the antioxidants, the brain health, all of that stuff. I'm happy to take that hit. But it's going to be a fun process, man. I think I want her to, and I think another one of the reasons why I don't necessarily want to raise her vegan is that I want to expose her to as many foods as possible to prevent any kind of allergies. And if she decides to, like, as I said, further down the line, and she doesn't want to eat, or maybe she might not even like certain foods. She might not even like chicken. And as you say, like your boy might only want to go with fish. So then it's easy, like sardines and things like that, omega-3s, easy to mash and puree and things like that. And again, just as many plants, as many different fruits and vegetables, as much color on the plate as possible. And I always say this anyway, like, I obviously know that a plant-based diet done really well is a great way to eat. It's not the only healthy way to eat, but it's great. But if people did want to have animal products in their diet, which you obviously can in a healthy diet, that should be like still a diet like predominated by plants. You still should be eating a number of different plants across the day, across the week. So that's what she's going to be doing anyway, and I'm sure she'll enjoy it.
Yeah. It's a fun ride, the old feeding, and they throw the food around and
yeah.
But it is fun to try these recipes and stuff, like, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes we'll find in the fridge these little cubes and we're like, oh, what is that? Like, we made that 6 months ago. And then you kind of like lick the cube, you're like, oh, that tastes like pear and apple.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
man. I'm thinking one more thing before we start to finish up. Is how do you feel like fatherhood has shifted your priorities as a person? Because I know that fitness, health, nutrition is a huge part of your life. It's a really, you're monitoring things, you're looking at things, you get into the gym daily. How has that shifted for you?
Do you know what? I think the biggest shift that I experienced and I noticed was that, like, so obviously I've been historically done a lot of like sleep tracking. I'm always taking the sleep supplements to optimize things and, all the different tracking and whatnot. I got to the point where I was just like, I don't really care about like this tracking stuff actually right now. I don't care about it at all, because, and look, that's not to say that it's not useful, because I did use it to my advantage, in particularly in that, late 20s, early 30s, where I'm really kind of dialing in and locking in my training and my nutrition and my sleep and things like that, to almost help to build a foundation for those moments for when like life gets busy, i.e. you have a child or your job's busy or whatever it may be. So then you can let go of the reins a little bit, but know that you can still do a little bit here and there. So tracking was just like, because there was no point, because it was like, if I'm going to be waking up once or twice in the middle of the night to help feed the baby, I don't need my watch to tell me that my sleep's terrible. I already know. Like, I already know how bad it's going to be. And then the funny thing is with these devices, it's like, they're going to be like, you've had 3 hours sleep, you need to rest. And I'm like, I can't. I've got work, I've got things to do. So I'm not going to listen to this. And I think there's a writer called Brad Stulberg. He tweets some really, really interesting stuff about like human performance, about excellence, like self-development, very cerebral thinking guy. I really like his work. He had a post recently about, there was a golfer who, he had an issue with his daughter in the middle of the night. His daughter got really ill. He had to had to go to the ER with her, like, and he had a big golf tournament the next day. I think it's the Open, professional golfer. And he said if he was someone who was like obsessed with optimization, he would have been worried about his performance. He would have looked at his tracker. He'd have looked at his data. It would have all been in the red. And then psychologically, that would have had an impact on his performance. Obviously, he wasn't. And he actually won the golf tournament the next day. So it's like, it just shows that, one, humans are very adaptable beings. We're very, very adaptable, even in circumstances where there's like deprived sleep. You're worrying about your child. Like even that first night when my child was born, I barely slept because I was just looking at her, just making sure that she was still breathing. Just things like that, But we're malleable, adaptable creatures. We're not black boxes, right? These data, they can be useful and they can be used to kind of guide decisions, but they shouldn't be the be all and end all. There are a lot of people who look at these Whoop and Garmin and all these different trackers, and if it tells them that they're not supposed to train, but they feel good, they'll rely on the data. And it's like, well, what about your own intuition, right? So trackers and all that kind of health tracking stuff kind of took a backseat for a bit, because I was like, I'm sleep deprived, but I'm still going to try and get things done anyway. So I was still trying to get runs in, still trying to hit the gym, even though they weren't like anywhere near like great sessions, but they were good enough to keep me ticking over, because it helps to feel good as well. I wasn't just going to kind of stop completely. And even if it meant, obviously with working and things like that and working on the different projects that I'm working on, I still needed to find that time. And even if it meant that I had to wake up really, really early to just get it in, to get it done, just so I feel good, that's what it takes. Because for me, I think health and well-being is now like, it's not just like an optional add-on in my life. It's just like a part of it. It's like brushing my teeth. Like I just do it because I know that it's good for my oral health. So health and well-being and training and nutrition, it's like I just do them because I know these are going to lend itself well to a good life. But of course it has to take a back seat in some way, because it's like, I've got a baby here, right? I can't just get up and go to the gym anymore. I have to see what's going on. It's like, is my mother-in-law around to kind of watch the baby? I might be able to fly upstairs to go to the gym. We've got a gym in the apartment complex. I might just be able to go upstairs for half an hour, get a quick session in and come back. Or, my wife still wanted to do some training as well once she was recovered. So it was like, I'll take the baby, you go and train. So yeah, it's less like, I think that's been one of the biggest instances where I've realized that it's not about me. I can't just make a decision on a whim. I have to see everything. I have to see the whole picture. How is the baby doing? Is my wife all good? Like, can I just sneak in a little session here, sneak in a little session there? So yeah, I think it's important to recognize that, like, whilst obviously it's super important to me, it's not the biggest priority in my life at this moment in time right now. It's still a huge priority, and I'll obviously fit it around in everything that I'm doing, but I have to be a little bit more strategic about it. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's shifting priorities around how our health becomes kind of secondary in many ways. I kept wearing my Oura ring all the way through. So wow. I've got this. Obviously, you can go back and look back at the data.
Yeah.
And there's that month when he was born. It's just like everything just goes whoo, hits the ground.
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is what I found is my sleep. My sleep and a lot of my metrics have been better, especially once we passed 3 months of him. Once 3 months came and he was sleeping a lot better, he'd only wake up maybe once in the night. Because I'm a bit more responsible with my sleep. I make sure I go to bed earlier. I make sure, because I know that I'm going to be needed more before. And it's funny because Orsa and Bjorn, they've been away in Sweden the last like week and a half. And the first week, like last week, I was so on it. I was waking up at like 6:30 every day. I was starting work. I was exercise. I've been to the gym more times than I've probably ever been to the gym for the last year and a half, pretty much. But then I noticed this week, bad habits crept in, going to bed late, waking up late. And I'm like, oh, it's interesting that in many ways, having him creates a structure for me to be better with my sleep in particular and bedtimes. And like, it's what I'm really noticing for myself is like, when he's here, sleep is much better. But what I just need to do is make sure that I'm making time to work out, because that's been the hardest thing to fit in. But actually, and I said this to a friend of mine, I'd wonder if this is something, is like, if I go to the gym and have this feeling of guilt of like, I've gone to the gym and this is me time, which is I need, but am I put too much strain on Orsa? Like, have I, could she have done something? Like, it's this like subtle guilt that's often come up for me. And I wonder if, in your early days, you've kind of felt this.
Yeah, I had that. I definitely had that. And I actually spoke to my wife about this. And she was kind of like, well, why are you guilty? You want to go to the gym, you know that you need it, just go and do it. But I still felt guilty, particularly in the early phase. And particularly if her mum wasn't around, if my mother-in-law wasn't around to support and it was just her, I felt a bit guilty. I was just like, but thankfully, because actually obviously we've got the gym upstairs in our apartment complex, which is okay. But then the gym that we were both going to before was one which is like a 20-minute drive away. So it's kind of far. It's in Acton. But then once the baby came, we realized that it was quite difficult to go there because it's just like, it's a 20-minute drive there. You're taking another 10 or 15 minutes to set up and get changed. And then you get your session going for about 50 minutes, whatever. Then you get changed another 20. So it's like 2 hours, almost 2 hours of the day. It's that just large chunk of just being away. And I just thought, I don't know if I could do that. So thankfully, a gym opened literally 1 minute walk away from our house, like a fully equipped proper gym. So I was like, okay, this is amazing. So we signed up there. Occasionally I go to the one in Acton because it has a spa, it's got a sauna, steam room, pool, which I love to do the sauna and stuff. But even still, it's like when I go, let's say there's traffic on the way and it takes half an hour to get there, I'm thinking, but I'm telling my wife, there's so much traffic, this, that. And she's just like, it's cool. Like, go and do your thing. Because I think she knows that I need it, but I also know that she needs it as well. So on the days where she's feeling good, she'll go to the gym, I'll look after the baby, or her mum will look after the baby. And I'm like, make sure you get that as well, because you know how important strength training and all those things that you've been doing for how many years are really important to you as well. So yeah, we've tried to find a good balance with that. It's interesting because we feel like, health, of course, it's not like it almost takes a back seat to prioritize the baby, but I still do think that it's really important to be our healthiest self, to be able to give our best to my wife, to be able to give my best to my daughter. So it's just trying to find that balance and how to kind of navigate it all.
Yeah, it is a balance. But the guilt is so interesting, because I've been almost like analyzing and talking about it with my partner also, and myself. Is like, I think maybe my brain has it that if I'm spending time doing something else that's not with them or puts pressure on her, then there's a feeling of like, I shouldn't necessarily, I feel bad for doing that. Or guilt is often some level of conflict. It's like, I want to spend time with him and us as a family. And I also want to work out and so forth. And even working, because, you run your own business, there's a level of like, I'm working till late. Could I have done bed to bath time and all these sorts of things? But it's quite a universal feeling for dads, this guilt. And I didn't know. A friend of mine told me, versed me about a year and a half ago. But it's not something I hear talked very widely about, this father guilt of just not being there, like working, gymming, anything that's their own time. And I guess I think of, is this something that many men have felt before in the past, but just kind of suppressed because it's uncomfortable to kind of feel that guilt, or they just rationalize themselves away from it?
Maybe, but I think, yeah, it was definitely something that came for me, as I said, because it's like you want to be there and you want to be in support. You always want to make sure that, and maybe it comes down to the kind of that protector and that kind of emotional support, that kind of thoughts around the family kind of thing that you want to experience, that you want to kind of lean into when you first become a dad. So it's like you go away for like an hour and a half to the gym or whatever, you start to feel like, oh, you start to get all these things in the mind, like, what if something's going to happen? Like, I'm a bit far away, like I've got to get in the car and drive back, and these kind of things, and all of this stuff starts going through your head, probably completely irrational, but it still comes up in the head because you want them to be as safe, you want them to be as well as possible, as they possibly can be. So yeah, there's definitely a bit of that guilt. And I think, as I mentioned, with regards to the gym literally opening right around the corner, that definitely put me at ease, because it's like, let's just say something was to happen. I don't know what it could be. I could quickly just run back home in like 30 seconds and it's all good. Whereas like if I'm in Acton, I've got to get in the car and drive for another 20 minutes all sorts could happen. So yeah, it's again, it just comes down to the whole wanting things to just be as good as you possibly can be for your family. So yeah, it's an interesting process, and it's funny because she was just like, "Why are you guilty? Just don't worry, go and do your thing." So it's been nice to have that understanding as well for the things that, because going to the gym and training and going for runs and all that kind of thing, it's really important for me just to feel good. Not even from like, I don't care about the aesthetic side of things. This is more just a feel good, like knowing that this is getting those kind of feel good hormones, those endorphins flowing, and to just help me be unstoppable at the start of the day to then be able to give everything to others. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's why it's yeah, she's been so supportive of that, because she knows how important it is for me to then be able to serve others as well.
Beautiful. And I'm going to ask one more question before we wrap up. And it's what's one thing that you wish someone had told you about fatherhood that no one mentioned to you, you didn't know, and now you wish you had known?
Do you know what? It's funny because I did a piece for a magazine, and they asked me the same question, and I kind of said like, I kind of felt like I'd expected everything. What I've kind of experienced, I kind of expected. So things like sleep deprivation, my time not fully being mine anymore, and I think that's maybe probably the one area where I still like not struggle, but like it's still a bit of like it has to be a conscious choice to be like, oh, I'm not going to just get up and go and do whatever I need to do now. I need to consciously go and check, are my family good? Is my wife all right? Is the baby good? Before I can then think about anything that I want to do, whether that's training or going for a run or whatever. Whereas before I could just be like, babe, I'm going for a run, and just go out the door. I just can't do that now. Which is absolutely fine. It's part of the process and it's totally normal. So I'd maybe say like, if someone had mentioned to me like that wasn't just going to be a kind of instant switch. Do you know what I mean? I think it's an ongoing thing where it becomes more and more natural over time, where I kind of there's that innate kind of feeling to just be like, right, whatever my needs are pushed to the side innately, and I can just straight away, be there for my family. There's still sometimes where it kind of like, not that I wrestle with it, but you kind of just like, oh, I've got to make that conscious choice. I can't just, I remember, I can't just go out the door. I've got to go and do what I need to do family wise. So I'd say that, but I think again, it's not like something that, has affected me in any way. I don't think it's something that has totally surprised me in any way either. I think it's all part of the process of fatherhood and part of the process of growing a family, where inevitably you realize that actually you're now in service of other people. And I do think it's a beautiful thing. I absolutely love being of service to my wife, to my daughter. I think that's one of the things that helps me to feel like I'm providing and supporting and being there. So yeah, I'd probably say that.
Yeah, incredible, man. Well, Jeffrey, man, thank you for such a candid and open conversation about your fatherhood experience, birth, and all of it. I imagine the listeners are really wondering where they can hear more about you and see your recipes for your many meals.
Yeah, so you can find me on my Instagram. It's just my first name, last name, Jeffrey Boydie. Got my website, jeffreyboydie.com. You can sign up to my newsletter there. I took a little bit of a sabbatical from the newsletter, a bit of a hiatus for like a few weeks, obviously just settling into dad life. I felt like something just had to give. So I'm probably going to start that up again next month. So you can sign up for free. I drop a newsletter every Monday, Wellness Weekly newsletter. So yeah, those are probably two of the main places that you can find me. I have my Twitter account as well. Same username with an underscore at the end. And yeah, just all about nutrition, healthy living, plant-based diets, not necessarily encouraging everyone to go plant-based, but sharing how you can get more plants into your diet, and just kind of take responsibility and control for your health and be aware of it. So yeah, that's what I'm all about, and that's what you could expect to find if you go and have a look at my channels.
Fantastic, man. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, listeners, for listening. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, there's going to be a father who's about to be a new father that you probably know, and the next, pass it on to him, because this is a really good, rich conversation with someone who's going to kind of enter into this fire, because it's a fire.
Yes,
It's a real cauldron.
Trenches at times for sure, but it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah. So share the love, listeners. Thank you for listening. Thank you again to Jeffrey. And I just say, until next time, ciao, ciao.